One of the most common questions that can come to your mind is that how should black respond against white's e4? I mean, what is the most impressive and effective defense for the black? I know that when it comes to black, Sicilian defense always emerges as the top choice. And it's no doubt that this defense is very good. Yes, Sicilian defense is actually very good. But you know what? Sicilian defense is known for creating sharp play and complications on your opponent. Moreover, the thing is that Sicilian defense always requires a sharp player. And if you are a beginner or you are just learning the chess, then there are many chances that you may shift from the main line and end up devastated. So that's why in this video, I'm going to tell you about the most impressive and effective opening for the black through which you can counter white's e4 move confidently. It's actually the French defense initiates with the e6, and guys, this is very good opening. I know that French defense is very simple opening, but it's on the flip side, it's very lethal also. So without wasting any more time, and let's understand the French defense normal variation. White goes with the e4 move. It's actually the king's pawn opening, and it's known for its aggressiveness and versatility. Through e4, white is actually controlling the center. I mean, aiming to proclaim the control over the center. And after this move, that is the d4, white will have actually more space, and that space is actually more than half of the board, so it is very good for white. Moreover, that's why it's very aggressive opening. Moreover, if you will go with a bishop to c4 and we have knight to f3, it's called the Italian system. Bishop to b5, it's a Ruy Lopez. King's pawn opening is actually very versatile also. So how should black respond? Black can go with the e6, and it is called the French defense. Now at this point of time, many players can think that what is the problem with the e5 move? I mean, e5 move is actually very good. So what is the problem with this? And you also know that e5 move is actually a king's pawn opening, and through this you can unleash multiple attacks. Like you can go with the Ruy Lopez, you can go with this maneuver with c4 bishop and target on your opponent's weak f2 square. You can go with the knight to this square, then knight there, then knight actually go there, giving a fork on the queen and the rook at the same time. And you know all these things, the fried lever things. And apart from the fried lever, you can also unleash multiple gambits like Budapest Gambit or multiple. There are many gambits that initiates from the E5 move. So actually, what is the problem with the E5 move? And through this thought, I will respond that you are second to move. Only this sentence that you are second to move is should be enough for you to understand that how the table will be turned. If you will go with the e5, let me just okay, not the king. If you go with the e5, white can simply go with the bishop to c4. Let us go with the bishop to c4, and now your f7 is actually under attack. By e5, you were planning to go for an attack to unleash some kind of gambits, but instead, now you have to defend. Suddenly, your offensive attack has turned into a defensive. So that's the thing, guys, because you are second to move, you should be very careful. And moreover, with the e5 move, your f7 pawn become a bit weak. And I have told you multiple times, guys, that you have to protect your f2 and f7 pawns right at the opening phases, because almost all the gambits are usually focused on this square, and that f7 square is actually the doorstep of your king's residency. So you have to protect it with all your might. And that's why e6 is actually a good move, because after e6, f7 got a protection here, and after d5, there is a layer of this pawn, and your king is actually safe. So that's the beauty of the French defense, and we are going to understand this only. Now, white goes with a d4 move, and we have d5 on the board. At this point of time, you can see that there is a pawn chain at this square. So even if bishop enters at the c4, bishop will be simply taken by our pawn, and we are quite good here. So bishop won't enter at the c4, and your f7 is actually intact. At this point of time, what can white do? White can do only two things. There are only two things that white can do. White can actually go with the e5, turning the territory into the advanced French variation. And apart from the e5, white can go with the knight to c3. White can go with the knight to f3. White can develop his bishop. White can develop his this bishop, or whatever white chooses. But if white goes something else apart from this e5 move, then this will call the normal French variation. And in this video, guys, we are going to discuss about that normal variation only. In the next video, I mean in the later video, I will discuss about the advanced French variation, because both the things actually requires a lot of time. So I can cover only one aspect of just the normal French variation in this video. So we are going to discuss only this only. In the next part, we are going for the advanced French variation. Now white goes with the knight to c3. If you are wondering that why knight comes at c3, this knight can also come at f3. Then if knight comes at f3, that simply means that white is giving up a pawn because now pawn takes pawn is there. Knight is under attack. Knight comes at g5 and we have knight at f6 defending this pawn. And now knight can't take this pawn, so we are actually winning a pawn. We are a pawn up right at the opening phase, and it's quite good for us. That's why white will not go something like this. White will go with the knight to c3 because knight to c3 is actually the most recommended move and the strongest move at this point of time. Now, at this point of time, what can black do? When black chooses the French defense, actually he has to face two disadvantages. And all their disadvantages, I mean, not all, there are only two disadvantages. So we will discuss both the disadvantages, right, when the time will come. So now the time has come for to discuss the first disadvantage. The first disadvantage is that your bishop, I mean your light square bishop is quite unhappy because you know that e6 is blocking your bishop's path and it's quite uncomfortable. So what you have to do, you just have to relocate your bishop. But now guys, there is no time for you to relocate because at this point of time, black can actually play multiple things. Like black can also go with the knight to this square. Black can also respond with this f5. Black can also go with a bishop, which is the main line, of course. Black can also go with the knight to c6. But guys, at this point of time in this video, I'm going to discuss the one of the most favorite, yes, one of the most simple and most favorite variation in the French defense of most of the players actually, which is the Rubinstein variation and further the Fort Knox variation. The beauty of this Rubinstein variation is that all the placements of your pieces will remain similar no matter what move your opponent does, but the placement of your pieces will remain similar. So it doesn't matter whatever white plays, you can just go for your mainline developments and you will just have an upper hand if you will just move your pieces carefully. Yes, that's the thing. You have to move your pieces carefully and then you will just gain an upper hand. Let's just start the Rubinstein variation in the French defense and it initiates with a pawn takes pawn at e4 and we have knight takes at e4 recapturing the knight. Now guys, what black has to do? Black has to go with a bishop to d7 because you know that bishop is quite upset here. So after that, white goes with the knight to f3. I mean, white can also go with other moves like he can go with the bishop here. Moreover, whatever white does, you just have to stick with your main lines, and the main line is that bishop to b7. Now after that, knight comes at f3, and we have bishop to c6. Now our bishop has been relocated, guys. You can see that bishop was actually present at c8, and he went d7. We have c6 bishop. And at this point of time, most of the players think that they can actually go with the pawn to b6 and then they can place their bishop at b7. But guys, in the French defense, it's quite a bad and passive move because you know that in the French defense, you have to go with a queenside castle when the time comes. And if you went with a queenside castle, then there is a hole in your king's residency. So this is not good. Moreover, you are actually opening up the diagonal connecting your rook because after pawn comes to b6, your diagonal connecting the rook will get open, and guys, it is not good for you. So that's why the best move is there. You have to go bishop to d7 and then relocate your bishop at c6. Now at this point of time, black is actually attacking this e4 knight here. So white goes with the bishop to d3, protecting this knight, and it's called a natural move and developmental move also. So now here you have to go with a knight to d7. Now the logic behind knight to d7 is that you are controlling this square. Now why? Why this square is quite important? Because your opponent's knight can jump at e5 and then attack this bishop because you know bishop is lurking on this e4 square and knight is under attack. So that's why this e5 square is very important for us to control, and we are controlling it by knight to d7. Now guys, here white can do multiple things like he can go with an queen to this square, develop his pawns, pawn to c3 is also a good move. He can also go with the h3, but the most recommended move at this point of time for the white is just to go for the castle here. And now we have knight at the f6. Now guys, if you will look carefully, then you will find out that this knight at e4 is actually attacked by our two pieces and defended by only one piece. Our knight is attacking this knight, our bishop is attacking this knight, and it is only defended by one bishop only. So actually we are gaining a material here. So that's why it is very good for us. And at this point of time, what can white do? White can actually play multiple things, but the most played move at this point of time are only two maneuvers. First maneuver is that knight can take the knight and just solve the problem. Second maneuver is pretty tactical. He can go with the g5, pinning the knight to the queen, and now knight is actually paralyzed. And just on a blink of an eye, this knight is under attack by our this knight. Okay, not this knight, by our opponent's knight. So it will just flip the coin just in an instant. And so don't worry, we are going to discuss each variation one by one. So let's start with the first variation where knight takes knight at f6, and it's actually a check here. Now guys, at this point of time, black can actually take this knight with his pawn at g7. He can retake the knight with his knight at d7, and he can also retake the knight with the queen at d8. Now, how should you recapture this knight? If you want to recapture the knight with a pawn, you can actually take the knight with a pawn, but guys, on the cost of your king side structure. Yes, if you take this knight with your g7 pawn, then your king side structure would get ruined. So it's not recommended. If you take this knight with the knight, then guys, it will simply mean that you are giving up the control over this e5 square, and it is not good because the knight can jump at e5, and then your bishop will under attack, and you will lose this active diagonal. It's quite scary for you. That's why you shouldn't retake the knight with the knight. The only option left for you is just to take the knight with the queen, and that's what black does. So at this point of time, what can black do? If you will look carefully, that queen is actually attacking this knight here, and queen is attacking this pawn also. And this knight is actually attacked by our bishop also. Yes, bishop is playing a very good role at c6. So if trade occurs at f3, then opponent's king side structure would actually get ruined. Now let me show you how. First of all, let's say white has to move, and you know that this pawn at d4 is also under attack. So white goes with the c3 to protect this d4 pawn. Now we have bishop takes knight, we have queen takes bishop, we have queen takes queen, we have pawn takes queen, and now you can see that white is left with a ruined king side structure. He has this weakened pawns, this weak pawns, this weak pawns, and you are actually winning because you know that you have very intact structure here. You are actually ready to go for a queenside castle, then your rook will get an open file. It's quite good for you, and that's why French defense is very good. Okay, I want to tell you one more variation, guys. That is common, that is mostly common against many players. So, and this variation, we have knight takes knight, we have queen takes knight, and now, guys, this is actually similar because this knight is actually doubly attacked by the queen and bishop, and this pawn is actually hanging. But what is different is that white actually goes with the bishop to g5, and now this is very trouble for us because you can see that this whole diagonal is under white's control, and now this diagonal is also white's control. So queen has actually no space left to move, and you can see that our queen is actually trapped here. So do you think is it time for us, I mean black player, to retire from the game? It's not retire, I guess. It is resign. Yes, it's resign. So, do you think it's time for us to resign from the match? But guys, it's actually the opposite because we have very good maneuver at this point of time. So, can you guess that maneuver? It's actually bishop at the f3 taking the knight, and now the queen is actually under attack. So if bishop takes our queen, we have bishop takes our opponent's queen, we have rook takes bishop, we have knight takes bishop, and suddenly, guys, the table has been turned, and we are actually a piece up, and we are actually ahead by a full piece here. Yes, we have two minor pieces for our opponent's one minor piece, and it's quite good for us. So that's the thing, and that's the variation which most of the players usually go with. So let's move on our next variation. Now let's take a look at another scenario where the second most played move is pinning the knight to the queen by bishop to g5. And as you can see, if knight takes knight at this point of time, there will be a bishop takes queen, and black is completely lost. So that's why we are not going to do this. What we are going to do is just to break the pin by bishop to e7. Now, guys, knight takes knight, we have bishop takes bishop, we have queen takes bishop, and actually, we are ended into the same situation only because now the knight is actually under attack by the queen. Now, pawn is also under attack by the queen. So, pawn comes and defend it, and guys, everything will go the same as we have discussed earlier. White will left with ruined king side structure and weak pawns. So, and also his pieces are not in coordination. You can see that white has a good pawn chain structure, but after c5 move, that structure would get ruined. Yes, that structure would actually get ruined because if pawn comes at there, we will simply take the pawn and we are quite winning here. So after rook comes there, but then we will simply take this pawn. So it's quite late. White is actually behind by a move here, and we are quite good here. So that's the thing. Now, guys, one of the biggest question that will come to your mind after watching this video is that how should black respond after this position? I keep saying that black is actually has a winning position, white is lost, and white has a ruined king side structure, white has a weak pawns. But how should black count? How should black act in this situation? I mean, how should black can take the advantage of the situation? So let's just take a look at this. How should black respond after this maneuver? So let's just go back so that you can just memorize. I mean, you can just learn this French defense perfectly. So we have e4 on the move, and we have e6 is the French defense. We have d4, we have d5, not queen. We have d5 on the move. Now, guys, what should be the next move? Knight comes at the c3, not this knight. Yes, guys, you don't go for this knight. I mean, if you are actually going with the black pieces, yes, your opponent is not dumb enough to go with the knight to f3. So we have gone with the knight to c3 move. Now, guys, what do you have to do? Do you have to go with the knight to c6? No, no, no. You have to go with the Rubinstein variation, where pawn takes pawn and knight recaptures the pawn with this. Now, what you have to do? You have to solve the problem of this bishop because bishop is quite unhappy. So what you have to do? Do you have to go with the pawn to b6 and then you have to go for a Catalan maneuver? But guys, it's a mistake because after queenside castle, your king will get some kind of exposed. So what do you have to do? You have to go with a d7 move. Yes, bishop to d7 is the move. We have knight comes at f3. We have bishop at c6, and now this knight is under attack. So to protect this knight, your opponent will go with the bishop to d3, and now we have knight at the d7, controlling this e5 square, which is quite important for us. And now we have white went for castle, and then we have knight at the f6 attacking this knight here. We have bishop blocking this, I mean pinning this knight to the queen, but we don't have to worry about. We are going with the breaking the pin. Now knight takes knight, we have bishop takes knight, we have bishop takes bishop, queen takes bishop, and now you can see that this pawn and this knight is doubly attacked. I mean, not this pawn double attacked, but this knight is double attacked. So what you have to do, I mean not what you have to do, what your opponent will do. Your opponent will go with the c3, and we have bishop takes knight, we have queen takes knight, we have queen takes queen, we have pawn takes queen, and now guys, we are just back in the situation. Now how should black respond? It's black to move. Can you find the best move in this situation? You have two rooks and one knight. How can you use these two rooks efficiently? So the best move for black here is just to go for a queenside castle, and now you have this whole open file for the rook, and now your rook is much more active. Now the next move can be this e5 maneuver, so that provoking this pawn to take, and we have knight takes pawn. Then this bishop will be under attack. So we can go with this. We can also go with the c5 move. If pawn takes, we have knight takes pawn. This bishop will be still doubly attacked. If we will go with the c5. If pawn comes there, then it will simply mean giving up this pawn because this pawn will take. So he has no means. So he has nothing just to capture the pawn. So if we go with this, he can go with this, and then our exchange will get crumbled. So it's recommended to move your c5 square. If pawn takes here, then you will simply take this one with the knight, and white can't reject, because if pawn comes at this square, we will simply take this pawn, and we are quite good here. So that's the thing, guys, and that's how black can respond, and black can take the advantage of the situation. Okay. What if your opponent is actually smart and he knows what move he has to play to just to protect himself from ending up devastated? And he knows what move he should play to gain a positional advantage. So therefore, what if your opponent didn't go with the c3? Yes, we moved this c3 move. Do you remember that we moved this c3 move? But what if your opponent doesn't move c3 and goes something else? So let's just go back. Yes, okay, we were there. And what if now your opponent doesn't go with a c3 but went for something else? Something which is much more solid than this c3 move. Actually, here the problem was that the opponent's knight was doubly attacked, and this pawn. Okay, now this pawn was actually under attack by the queen. So to defend this pawn, your opponent goes with a c3. But what if it doesn't go with a c3? What if your opponent actually go with the bishop to e2, and now guys, threat to the king side structure is actually neutralized, because you can see if bishop takes knight, we have bishop takes bishop, and now everything is good for white. So in this situation, how should black respond? And now, guys, there comes the move, and through this move, you will understand why pawn to b6 is not a good move, or you can see that bishop to b7, which is the maneuver or essence the Catalan, is not a good move in the French defense. I guess you have understood, guys. We are going for a queenside castle, and now why it's a queenside castle is very good because you can see that rook has got an open file here. Yes, and now what is the best part? It's the queen at d1. Yes, if you ever manage to place your knight at somewhere else, let's say knight to b6, then this pawn is actually pinned, and you can just provoke this pawn by this maneuver. If pawn takes pawn, we have rook takes queen, and it's quite good for us. So at this point of time, how should black move to take the advantage of this position? So let me explain you that. Now white goes with the pawn to c3 because there is some pressure on the d4 pawn, and so to neutralize this pressure, white goes with the c3. And now guys, what you have to do, you have to go with the e5 move, provoking this pawn. If knight takes pawn here, you can simply take the knight. If pawn takes knight, then there is a beautiful move there which is called the rook takes queen, and you are completely winning here. So this is not going to happen. I know that no one is that much dumb to make this happen. Most of the players usually go with the pawn to d5, attacking this bishop. But guys, still you don't have to worry. You can just use your rook to pin the pawn, and what will occur? You can go with the knight to c5, pinning the pawn to the bishop, pinning the pawn to the queen. And now if queen takes bishop, we have rook takes queen, and again we are completely winning here. And moreover, this pawn is hanging too because bishop can take this pawn and queen can't recapture our bishop. So it's quite good for us. If white goes with a pawn to c4 to defend this pawn, then again it's quite good for us, guys, because you can go with the pawn to c4, and now knight is under attack. So if knight moves at d4, guys, don't worry, you have to go, we have to take this pawn, and now pawn takes bishop, you have rook takes pawn, and now this knight is actually lost. Yes, if knight moves somewhere else like this, simply go and take the queen, so it won't happen. If queen goes away from this whole file, then this knight is lost. Moreover, if queen still remains on the d1, let's say white goes with the b4 to in order to threat our knight here. Let's just take this knight. If queen takes not this, if queen takes rook, we can simply take the queen with our queen, and it's quite good for us. So you can see, guys, that knight is actually lost, and you are actually ahead by a piece here. So that's the thing. That's how you can respond against a good move, that is bishop to e2 instead of where is the c3? Where is c3? Instead of c3, okay, that's the c3. That pawn has already been taken, so it is not present. So instead of c3, okay, Shubham, we understand, but actually in the real gameplay, no one is that much dumb to just take this knight or to just pin this knight to the queen, because most of the players know that what will happen after pinning the knight to the queen or after taking the knight with the knight. So no one is actually that much dumb, and no one will go with this thing. They can go with a knight to g3, which is actually a good move and the most recommended move at this point of time. And if anyone goes with the knight to g3, I mean not anyone, we are assuming that your opponent is actually very smart. Yes, he has a very top level and he knows what should be the best move, and he played this. There is a knight to g3 on the board, and now how should black respond at this point of time? Well, guys, knight to g3 is a backward move. It's a little passive move, and since no attack is coming at your doorstep, you can simply go for your developments. And you can go with the bishop to e7, and we have a castle here. So let's say now if white goes with the c3, you can simply go for a castle here. And now, guys, you can see that your developments have been finished, and you are quite good here. Now, the most important thing that black has to worry about is that this e5 square. Yes, the knight can jump at the e5 and can take this bishop and can take this queen, not queen, the knight. And because this knight is actually protected by this pawn, so after you retake this knight, pawn will retake the knight, and now this pawn will be under attack. So it's quite annoying for you. Yes, that is quite annoying because you have to relocate your this knight at f6, which is beautifully placed. So it is quite annoying for black. Moreover, it's very good for white to attack on this e5 square, and it is the most probable and I guess the only attack that white can initiate at this point of time. So white goes with the knight to e5, and we have knight takes knight, now pawn takes knight, and now our knight at f6 is under attack. So what you have to, you don't want to relocate your knight, because if you go there, bishop will take it. If you go with there, queen will take it. If you will go with there, again queen will take it. If you will go there, then it's quite a wastage of move because it's not a good square for knight. Because from this square, where the knight is looking, because knight is looking nowhere. Yes, he can't go anywhere. there are no good square left. Okay, knight can't go there, but still there are no good square left for the knight. So I guess this is not good. So how should black respond here at this point of time? The most important move, I guess, at this point of time, or maybe the most best move, is just to place the queen to d5 and threatening a checkmate at g2. Now, if pawn takes knight, we have queen comes at g2, and it's actually a checkmate. So this is quite good. And now, guys, if bishop comes at this square, because you know that bishop is actually protected by the knight, takes bishop, then knight will take the queen. Then, guys, you can simply take the bishop with the knight. Knight takes knight. We have queen takes bishop, and now this pawn will be under attack. And also, we are ahead by a piece. So I guess no one is that much dumb to go with this maneuver. Okay, let me just. Okay, yeah, we were there. No one is that much dumb to go with this maneuver. They can actually take the knight, and if you take the knight, you can simply go with a checkmate. So how can they respond and protect themselves from the checkmate? They can actually go for a queen trade, but you don't have to worry about. You can simply take this pawn here, because if because now here the queen is actually under attack by the bishop. If queen takes bishop, take the queen with the pawn, so it is nothing to worry about, and you are completely fine. And there is no way through which white can attack you, and you're actually a pawn up. So that's the thing, guys. You're actually a pawn up, and it's quite good for you. So that's how you can counter this knight to g3 move, which is the most recommended move at this point of time. And even if your opponent is rock solid and is very smart, then still you can outsmart him with these kind of maneuvers and this with these kind of moves. And the most important and the most beautiful thing of this variation is that in the Rubinstein Fortnox variation, the placement of every piece remains the similar. Yes, guys, remains similar, and you are quite good. All right, all right. What if your opponent has surpassed the superiority of master level? What if your opponent is actually very good? What if your opponent actually knows the basic theories of French defense, and he knows what move he should play to gain the positional and tactical advantage? What if you are playing against a god? I mean, not a god, but still, what if you are playing against a very good and genius person? And he's a very rock solid, and he is not going to flinch with any kind of your provocating and traps, and he just going for a perfect and best move. So what if he plays with a rook to e1, which is one and only, yes, one and only, and the best move in this scenario? And if you are playing with the white pieces and your opponent plays with the French defense and develops develops his pieces like this, you have to go with the rook to e1, which is the most recommended move at this point of time. And if you faces an opponent who plays rook to e1, then guys, there is still no need to worry about that. You don't have to worry about, because this is just a development and defensive move. So you can just focus on your development. So black goes with the e7, and we have this king side castle. And let's say white goes with the c3. You can simply develop the king side castle. And now, guys, your development is quite good. And now you have to unleash your attack. And at this point of time, I'm going to discuss about the second disadvantage of the French defense, and that's actually the lack of space. Yes, guys, you can see that your queen is quite trapped here. You can't move your queen anywhere, because queen is trapped by his own pieces. Your bishop has only one diagonal, and your bishop is actually has no good spaces. He just targeting this knight only, which is actually good, but still, bishop is quite passive here. Your knight is just looking at this square, looking at this square. This knight is looking at this square, but these are all passive things. And your pieces have not been developed above the fifth rank, so it's quite annoying, and it's not good for you. And this is all because you lack the spaces. And if you're playing with the black pieces and opt for French defense, it's very good for you to trade some of the pieces, so you can just gain some spaces. So that's the thing. And now white goes with the bishop to f4, and then white can do anything he wants. But let's just say it is the most natural and tactical maneuver at this point of time. We have bishop takes knight, we have bishop takes bishop, we have knight takes bishop, and we have rook takes knight here, and we have knight at the f6, winning a tempo on the rook. So rook has to go back, and now, guys, here your king is quite protected, and not quite, it is heavily protected, and there is no way through which your opponent can attack your king. And I'm so sorry, guys. If your opponent goes with the rook to e1, there is nothing that you can do. I mean, there are multiple things that you can actually do, but there are no traps that can be initiated after this maneuver. But since you haven't gained any kind of traps, but you have a very good advantage, and that's the positional and tactical advantage. Yes, guys, you can see this pawn chain is very good for the white, but after this maneuver, this c5, this pawn chain would get destroyed, and you are quite good here. So that's the thing, guys, and that's how you can respond against that white's e4 move. And this is a French defense, and moreover, guys, moreover, your opponent goes with the rook to e1, and that's how this situation comes up. And in this situation also, you have got an upper hand, because after pawn to c5 move, we have pawn takes pawn, we have bishop takes pawn, and then this whole structure, this pawn chain structure would get crumbled, and you will get a good space. And what you have to do is just to play confidently, play carefully, so that you won't give any chances to your opponent to gain an upper hand. And if you will play carefully from this point of time, you will simply win the match with ease. You just have to be carefully. And guys, that was the French defense, and that was the normal variation in the French defense. So let's just go back, and let me just explain you one more time. We have e4 on the board. We have e6 initiating the French defense. We have e5, d4. We have d5 on the board, and now knight comes at the c3. We have pawn takes pawn. We have knight takes pawn, which is a Rubinstein variation. Bishop to d7. Knight comes at f3. We have bishop to c5, and we have bishop at not a c5, it's c6 actually. We have bishop to d3, protecting this knight here. And since we are attacking this knight, okay, not there, attacking this knight by the bishop, we have knight at the d7, and now we have a castle here. We have another knight at this square, and now this knight is doubly attacked. So knight takes knight. We have queen takes knight. We have bishop comes at g5. Now there is this maneuver on the board. If bishop takes queen, we have queen takes bishop, there is a rook takes bishop, and we have knight takes bishop. And now, guys, that was the French defense. And this variation, you are actually a piece up. But I have discussed multiple variation where the position was actually equal, but you have gained a positional tactical advantage. So that was the thing, guys, and that was the French defense. This was the main line of the French defense. And guys, we have discussed the normal variation in the French defense. In the next video, I mean the part 2 video, we are going to discuss about the advanced variations. So just wait for some time. I will upload that video also. I mean, first I have to shoot that video, I will upload it. So it will take some 2 to 3 to 4 days, but it will be soon on my channel. So just wait for some time. And that was the thing, guys. That was all for today's video. That was all for the normal variation in the French defense. And you are watching Cyril Chess Diaries, and I am Shivam Kumar. And I hope you have liked this video, and please do use this defense and tell me how it worked in the comments. So please do like, share, comment, and subscribe the channel. And I will meet you in the next one with the advanced French variation. And till then, take care.